Wi-Fi connected offshore, you can send emails, you can send texts, and if you're on the beach, there'll be, hopefully in one of the big cities, there'll be a branch near you can go and visit people face to face.
I think going back to that question of what can companies do, there's a lot of people obviously being made redundant in the industry still. Companies aren't putting any information out when they are paying people off, means they're getting a 2-minute phone call saying they're paid off.
Yep.
And that's people have come off the phone, they're broken.
No, I know.
So what can companies put information to the Samaritans to lead you to them if you need to talk, or what?
It's real difficult, because I can tell you there's a bunch of things to do. Yes, one of those things that you do, for example, we work with GPs, and we get, with the consent, informed consent of the patient, we get referred patients who need to talk immediately, 6-month wait for counselling service in Aberdeenshire, so we speak to them that night. So yeah, that we do that with GPs, with the informed consent of the, if you like, the employee. I think, and I apologise for going slightly legal on you here, but I'm fairly confident that what will happen in companies is they'll be very worried about assuming, I'm going to call it residual liability for employees. And I know it sounds cruel and callous and how could they, but I'm afraid that's how I think companies roll. And they'll be nervous of including too much detail because they've, inverted commas, followed the law. That said, I mean, I guess you have an organisation here, you've got your G18, you've got your step change. Maybe that's something to try and maybe emphasise, because it's folly to say anything other than a phone call, a letter, and as you say, somebody said, maybe your support network is Jimmy the crane driver. Yeah, and now you're not going to see Jimmy because he lives in a different part of the country, and you're not that close when you're onshore, but you're close when you're offshore. Yeah. So I think maybe it's something to suggest to those companies who are handing out the letters and the notices that they might want to include something, or even just a suggestion of a couple of websites. And I think, as we discussed some of this earlier, I think different companies have different approaches. I've mentioned a helicopter company that seems to me to be quite aware, and I think we've heard that some of the big operators are probably quite aware, and I can't speak for the rest because I don't have much experience of it. But many things are possible. But honestly, again, I really do mean this. On the internet, guys, or gals, I believe 2% of the workforce could be gals out there. 3% of the workforce, sorry, I've just been told there's an increase in the offshore female workforce. But have a look and see what you can find for yourself. The point would be, and I hope it's coming across in spades, is that it is really important to talk. Because by talking, by sharing the problem, you can hack it. Okay. They're passing over the question, which means it must be a real doozy.
It's a doozy.
It's a doozy.
I would just also say that we talk about organisation. Your own mates are also an organisation, so it's up to you to kind of help them.
Yes.
And it's that whole thing of how do you spot somebody who's not in the best of places.
2 slides to go, and then we'll get to it.
So right, we've got another question here, Davis, from Pat. A question about the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi.
So you agree that this is a useful tool in order to make families feel closer, but do you feel this could also be detrimental tool? What advice would you give to personnel to manage manage and cope with issues that arise?
I'm feeling the urge to retreat behind my Samaritan motto of I give no advice, but I won't.
Well, you can tell me now.
Yes. So absolutely, Pat. I think it's incredibly powerful, and if I could call it this way, if things are going reasonably well, I think it's a huge improvement for the emotional health of the offshore workforce. Rather than standing there with your phone card for the 20 minutes you'll get on the phone, however often you make to it, and the queue halfway down heli admin as you wait for your turn. So absolutely, I think Wi-Fi and all the communication it brings is beneficial. And I don't know the answer to this, because I know that every time, and I was explaining to the guys earlier, my wife was very much of the opinion that every time I went away for business, a pet died. And I used to have to hold the phone out here as I was told yet again I'd gone away, and all the emotional stress and strain of dealing with the children as the pet died, and I was away, and it just landed on you, and you are in a hotel somewhere in Paris, and there's nothing you can do. And I'm sorry, I'd love to tell you, and this is part of the problem with emotional health, I don't have take this pill, take it twice a day, and that will fix things. But I guess all I can tell you is be aware. And if, let's say, the children are having problems, let's say there are problems with your parents, tell people. I guess that's my first point. Tell people. And that probably is one where you could argue that it's important to tell somebody in the workforce, one of your colleagues, because if your head's not in the right space, back to Jimmy the crane driver, crying in the showers again, you know, it is a risk to the platform.
I think the problem is though, these people that you're working with, they're like your best mates, you're with family for 3 weeks at a time, but once you hit that heliport, you'll never hear from them for 3 weeks.
Which is great.
Yeah, which is great in some sense, but
All those marks.
All those marks.
how do you open up to them for your problems?
Yeah.
I'll be perfectly frank. The way I do it is when I get back to work, I just take the whole lot and just have a random conversation about random stuff and see what flies out of that. It's like a collider effect, and that's interesting. We'll talk about that. That's not interesting. We'll talk about that.
But I'm going to try and answer Pat's question. Okay, my best suggestion, if there is a lot of stress, strain and negative emotion coming up the line when you're offshore, all I can suggest is, wherever it's coming from, you need to have a conversation about the impact on you. Now, I appreciate if it's because the person onshore is having a bigger stress and strain, it's a very difficult conversation to have. But all that's happening is perhaps your absence is not making the person on shore any better, and them communicating how bad it is making you worse. Net sum is a worse position for two human beings. Perhaps it's about conversation. But I can appreciate in many cases, because again, not everything fits for everybody, that will just again actually make the person on shore feel even worse. You're offshore and you don't even want to speak to me now. I can imagine it very well.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. I agree with the analysis, and I don't have an easy solution. And by the way, talking doesn't fix things. Talking starts to reinforce your emotional health, but probably it's going to take action. And if we get to the end of the slides, as I gather we're already 40 minutes through, there's a few suggestions of how you might go forward. In fact, on that basis, let's go to the next slide so we can get a chance of going through this.
Good man.
Okay, so I think I've been asked on more than one occasion, how might you spot somebody is upset? And here's a few suggestions for you.
Again, upset. That's, to me, upset's a really kind of, oh, he's a bit upset. You know, it's almost like a childish way of putting it. Because they're not really upset, are they? It's like, it's at a different level.
Well, is it? I mean, yeah, I can understand. Okay, I understand what you mean, and I can hear what you're saying on that. But what we would say is, if your emotional health is even slightly deteriorating, and I think you'll see from, I mean, you can see the slide, there's a couple of things in there, one of them involving a scalpel, that you'd say, that's a bit of an extreme reaction to upset. So, what we mean by upset is, you know, your emotional balance is upset. If you think of it as a balance, if you think it's out of kilter, it's upset. So rather than think of it as a personal emotion, because you're absolutely right, I mean, this could be screaming distress and despair rather than just upset. But given we're all roughy-tufty and given we all try and hide how we feel, then what are the gives, what are the tells that you might find that somebody's life is not going perhaps as it could do? And you see the 8 there. Now 6 of them, we would say, so from Mr. Grumpy Angry the Cat to the smelly boy with the sheep, or lamb, crying, tired, might just have been playing on Xbox all night. What are these people doing in their cabins, I don't know. Smoke, drinking, drugs, well I drink and I don't think I'm that upset. Crying. So those are possible signs. I think the 2 we would separate out would be self-harm and the great white telephone, unless it's associated with drinking. But eating disorders. We would say those are 2 where the person doing it, experience it, is actively trying to hurt themselves.
Okay.
And that's probably also the tell you would get offshore. Unless there's somebody who's particularly accident prone, and it may be that they're just not paying attention. So it could be accident prone. What you're really looking for is deltas in behaviour, changes in behaviour. So Jimmy the crane driver, I love that guy, is always life and soul. of the canteen. He always is the guy cracking the jokes and telling the stories, and he's sitting and he's smiling and he's not showing any obvious sense, but he's not telling the jokes anymore, and he's letting other people take the conversation. That's a change. Conversely, Jimmy, who always sits quietly, eats his tea, nods affectionately, and if you talk about Wraith Rovers, we'll join the conversation. But if he suddenly starts being extrovert, if he suddenly starts hogging the conversation and talking in an almost a maniac way, well, perhaps that's also a sign. So it's the delta, it's the change that you're looking for. And that's kind of the one-size-fits-all. Look for changes. Okay? So let's roll on for another 5. No, we might answer a question while we get to the 5-second lag.
That's a good one. This is quite a pertinent question. A lot of people don't get privacy for 21 days. It's me time. Is me time just as important in the sense that people sharing cabins, working with the same guys, eating with the same guys?
On balance, I would think probably yes.
No good.
Probably yes. But if you happen to be somebody who hates being alone, absolutely pathological fear of being alone, sharing a cabin is the best thing. It's just wonderful for your work because you're always with another human being. And that might be something that really helps somebody. So, problem is, when I'm dealing with 8 billion people and their emotional health, there is no one answer. But I would say on balance, yeah, most people require at least some me time. And I don't know what facilities there are, and I suspect installations are different, whether you can or can't get me time. I suspect FPSOs are slightly worse because they're a bit smaller. But no, absolutely. This is it. So, we'll come on to this last slide. This is one we picked up, well, second last slide. This is one we picked up from Bristow's, actually, when we support them. And it comes from an Australian campaign. So if you want to look at it, and I have to say here, I think, because I didn't check it, this is not necessarily endorsed by the Samaritans. So David has looked at it and thinks it's pretty good, but that's not the Samaritans. Good enough, absolutely. And it simply says, if you're concerned about something, you've spotted a delta in the behaviour in the previous page, ask them. Now, don't just walk up to Jimmy in the middle of the canteen, slam your tray down, and in the loudest voice possible, you're a bit quiet, Jimmy, what's going on? Possibly not the best way if he's dealing with something. So we are looking for, back to privacy actually, we're looking for maybe somewhere you can get quiet, where you can ask, in case they do, not because you should be scared of a bad emotional reaction, but if they do have a reaction, for their own self-worth, if you like, you may not want somebody to actually break down in the middle of the canteen. Not good for them, because we do have all those self-images we just talked about through most of this session. But I think it is about asking the question, and you try and ask it with open questions. So again, you got a face, I can't say that, it's probably a bad word to say, but you're looking very miserable, James. What's up?
It's that conversation. It's how to start a conversation without sounding patronising or glib or whatever that term is for.
So this will sound amazing because it's in Australians, but if you go and type in, literally as it's on that headline title, "Are you okay?" Avoid the one that's hyphenated, that's the UK Kids one. You'll get to the Australian website, and there are 4 bullet points there, but asking the question, listening without judgment, encouraging action and follow-up. There is, if you go onto the website, you can click down and there's like 2 pages of coaching, advice, help and tips. There's also some buxom Australian ladies in the front with Australian suits on, but that's a different matter entirely. You shouldn't be looking at it for that reason.
They might be okay either.
You should ask them if they're okay. I think they look very... I like to say happy. You don't like me saying happy, do you? Whatever. They're...
don't dislike happy.
Yeah. But...
it's one of the 7 dwarfs.
Yes, indeed. But so's Grumpy.
And Doc.
Yes. It's a useful website, but it is about... I mean, we do... It's another distillation of how we do it at Samaritans. It's about asking open questions. It's about getting privacy. Making sure you've got the time. So, if you are a supervisor and you know you're going to have to get to the OIM's meeting in 10 minutes' time, and you can see somebody's worried, maybe it's not the best time to try and sit down and have a conversation. Now, I appreciate you can always avoid the OIM's meeting.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, I know, but there may be some things that you simply can't find the time to do. Yeah. So the important thing is to try and make sure you've got the time to listen. Listening without judgment, absolutely what we do in Samaritans, and it's very important. And if you are listening, there's 2 things you probably need to watch out for. One is the word I. If you are listening to somebody and much of your conversation or your content in the conversation is I, you've stopped listening and you've started telling your story.
Okay.
And that's not what you're here to do. You're here to listen to somebody and try and help them with their emotional health.